Welcome, everybody. It's Sven Hosford, the media director with the Pennsylvania Medical Cannabis Society, once again here with a podcast to find out more about what's happening in Harrisburg. We're on the Zoom today with our Director of Government Relations, Tom Santanna. How are you doing today, Tom?
Good, Sven. Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing great. And we're going to talk to you a little bit more today to get to know you a little bit better, to find out more about what makes you tick and why you're motivated here with medical cannabis, and to get a quick update of what's happening in Harrisburg. So let's start, Tom. You have a really interesting background. You started out as a lobbyist, as a straight up lobbyist. Tell us a little bit about that and what kind of things you did there in Harrisburg.
Sure. My background was I graduated from college and moved back to my hometown of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is the state capital of Pennsylvania, and was an intern at a very large lobbying firm within Harrisburg, within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and worked my way up to senior associate there, where I was managing clients and coming up with legislative strategy, which was a great opportunity to see how private business interacts with state government. From there, I moved to a corporate entity, energy holding company based out of Allentown, Pennsylvania, where I.
So you actually moved from the lobbying to working basically the same kind of work, but in a private industry.
That's right. It was going from contract lobbying to in-house government relations representation, where you just work for one specific company.
And then from there, you had another interesting option, and you moved into the public sector. Tell us about that.
Sure. When Governor Corbett was elected, I had the opportunity to be the director of legislative affairs for the Department of Environmental Protection, which is a 2,700 person agency, one of the largest agencies in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Just issues that touch every business, every entity within the Commonwealth, and working within government like that was just such a fantastic opportunity to broaden my network and my relationships with people, and see how a state agency works.
You saw it really close up. I mean, people talk about the sausage making of legislation, but you were actually doing more of like implementing the law and building the regulations. Is that right? Do I have that about right?
In my role at DEP, it was certainly a little bit of the sausage making process. Insofar as establishing statutes, but yeah, a big part of that was witnessing the regulatory processes that occur within the department, and seeing how that works after the lawmaking process is over.
Well, and that's really going to be key, and that's why we're so excited to have you on board as our new director of government relations, is that we're creating a whole new industry from scratch. So you've got some really invaluable experience. You want to talk about that?
Sure. I mean, I think when you put all of it together, when you have a background where you worked at a lobbying firm where you saw how you took a variety of different businesses and you interacted with them and within the state government, then you worked at a major corporation where you learned a lot of different business issues and how those large business issues impact state government and how actions of state government impact that business entity. And then, the third part of it all is working within state government and seeing how, what those functions are, what makes all those folks tick, and the right way and the wrong way to do things within state government, and kind of establishing some of those relationships. You really come out with, like you said, an interesting perspective, and that's the perspective that I bring to the Pennsylvania Medical Cannabis Society.
And we should say, too, that you're now an independent lobbyist. You're the president of Tom Santanna Strategic Consulting. And actively lobbying for many other people too, right?
Well, that's been a great opportunity for me to run my own business and above all else, choose who I want to work with. And one of the issues when I started this business, and it is a fairly new business, is that I wanted to work on the medical cannabis issue. It's one that I feel is very important from a personal perspective and something that I could really get behind.
And that's got to be very satisfying for you too, to be able to pick and choose the kinds of causes and kind of industries that you want to work with.
It is, especially when you've worked for a variety and with a variety of different businesses and a bunch of different issues. When you're working with something that you're really passionate about, it doesn't really feel like work. You're just living every day, and it's a great feeling.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, I think, as I hope a lot of people recognize, when you do that, the success is much more frequent.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one thing people can be sure of is, well, let's make sure. Tell us a little bit about, why you are so passionate about medical cannabis and why you think it's such an important industry to be a part of.
So, well, I've been watching the industry in other states for several different years, and it just kind of boggles my mind that there's a plant that just kind of grows in the earth that has so many medicinal benefits, and yet it's illegal. But on the other hand, there's a ton of other pharmaceuticals that are readily available and oftentimes prescribed and overprescribed.
Right.
They're horribly toxic and have a bunch of synthetic ingredients that are addictive and that have caused people to die.
Yeah.
So I think that it's sort of outrageous. And if I could be part of the fight to change that, I'm certainly happy to do that. And it makes me happy every single day to know that I am doing that.
Well, and it's also heartening for those of us who've been wanting to see this change for a long time that there are so many people in Congress now and people you have direct daily contact with who are also just as passionate. And even, we should say, people on both sides of the aisle.
It's definitely a bipartisan issue. Senator Fulmer, he's a Republican senator from Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, is the sponsor of Senate Bill 3, which is the medicinal cannabis bill. But he, when I interviewed him earlier on this year,
Mm-hmm.
He had indicated that it was certainly a bipartisan issue, and health isn't. Nothing divides that. Republican, Democrat, that all kind of gets whitewashed away when you're sick and you have, a huge problem on your hands.
Well, we should say that your interview with Fulmer, really fascinating, very good job, and it's available on our website and on YouTube. And in that interview, he actually did point out something you just spoke about, that the opioid overdose situation in Pennsylvania is just horrendous. And from a public policy perspective, there's very few things that are as high on their radar or is killing as many Pennsylvanians as opioid overdose. And it was really heartened to see that Senator Fulmer pointed out that when in states that have adopted medical cannabis, opioid overdoses drop by 25% on average. So that, again, great job on the interview, and it was just heartening to see he's up on all of the statistics.
Yeah, and it's one of those statistics that I don't think that a lot of folks are really even aware of. And certainly the opioid issue in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is way out of control. And that issue's been luckily getting a lot of press. And hopefully as we move forward, we can educate more folks on the benefits of medical cannabis and perhaps lowering some of those opioid deaths and overdoses.
Well, that's what we can all hope for. And just to really make sure everybody gets this, you really are talking to many of the movers and shakers on the medicine side as well as on the legislative side. You had a meeting today with a very interesting fellow. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. We have been talking to folks from all over the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania who are interested. And the one today is Dauphin County Coroner Graham Petrick, who's been interested in the issue and vocal in some regards to the issue. And it's fascinating with, meeting all these people from various professions, various walks of life, who are all interested in this issue and see the value of medicinal cannabis. So that's been very eye-opening to know that we're certainly not alone, and there's some very influential, smart, and capable people that are very supportive of this issue.
Yeah, this is not just a bunch of hippies anymore. This is, as you said, very, very serious and a lot of very intelligent people dealing with it. So let's just really quickly say we're here in early February. Senate Bill 3 is still in the House. We're fairly optimistic that that's going to see some movement in the next couple of months.
Right. There's been some issue. The Senate had passed the bill back in May, and because of the budget impasse within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that has historically gone on longer now than any budget debate in the history of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, a lot of other legislative issues just got jammed up in that whole mess. And Senate Bill 3, the medical cannabis bill, was certainly one of those issues. And now is we're into 2016, and they're going to start working on another budget, even though there isn't a full budget in place yet. I think there are a couple windows of light in order for the legislation to be considered, and other pieces of legislation to be considered. And one of those would be coming up here soon in March. So our fingers are crossed that when the state legislature comes back into session in mid-March, that they'll bring up Senate Bill 3 for consideration in front of the full House of Representatives.
That's great. Any word? Have you heard anything about all the excess amendments that have been tried to tack onto it, or THC caps or any of that sort of thing?
Well, I think we're going to have to keep a close eye on it. There's been just hundreds of amendments filed at this point, and obviously all of them can't be considered. I believe that House leadership is looking to condense a couple, ideas brought up in the amendments into one omnibus amendment. We're certainly going to be interested to see what that looks like, and we'll analyze it once we get our hands on it.
Well, and so we're gonna stay optimistic on that, stay positive, and we should say that once Governor Wolf signs a bill, which he said he will do, that's really when the hard work starts. That's really when your hard work starts. That's when you're going to be getting right into the weeds and have the ears and be able to speak to the people that are actually creating the legislation. Can you describe that process of what's going to happen after the governor's signature?
Sure. I think that it's a little bit hard to say at this point because we don't know what the final legislative process is going to look like. But I think it's fair to assume at least there'll be some sort of regulatory board established to oversee the medical cannabis industry. And at that point, it really just the biggest part is just meeting with those folks and going over what our concerns are and making sure that whatever is implemented correctly to encourage a flourishing industry, one that's helps patients and that is beneficial to those who invested in the industry. And there can be good middle ground there. And that's just an everyday process, and there's certainly going to be bumps in the road as we go along. But having somebody with their finger on that pulse is going to be extremely important to the overall benefit of this new industry.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And we want to say, too, that when people become members of the Pennsylvania Medical Cannabis Society, they can join on a weekly conference call with you and talk to you every week about what's going on there in Harrisburg. You're basically going to become like you are the lobbyist for all of us, and all of us have access to you. That's got to be pretty exciting.
I'm really excited about that, Sven, particularly that part, because it's so difficult sometimes to capture what goes on in writing and going back and forth. And we have this great technology now where all of us have access to these kind of cameras and this technology where we can just talk about it and have, video conference calls and be able to take questions on it. And new things are happening all the time. I mean, everything changes minute to minute to minute. So to have the capability of having a call and updating folks is going to be so helpful, and make my job a lot easier. I'd much rather just talk to a large group of folks and answer a bunch of questions, as opposed to write something and post it that may be inaccurate a day later.
Yeah, yeah. And then have to answer all the questions the people email you back in return.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, again, Tom, we're just super excited to have you on board. I can't believe we've been with us like a month, a little over a month now, and your daily updates are so valuable, and we feel totally connected here into what's happening in Harrisburg. So we want to thank you for that, and we're really happy to have you on board.
Hey, it's 100% pleasure on my part, and this is an extremely important cause, and I'm glad that there's such a strong team at the Pennsylvania Medical Cannabis Society in place, willing to serve this industry.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks again, Tom, and we'll look forward to more updates in the future.
Thanks, Ben.